Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Starbase friends around the world. Astro Joe here for RGV Aerial Photography, Starbase Weekly 108. We've got recent ground photos and a flyover from yesterday, so I'll send it right over to our host this week. Take it away, Stephanie.
G'day from Australia. Thanks, Joe. And Joe will be doing questions and donations later on. And yeah, we've got a lot of changes this week. I've got a couple of guest commentators with me. I'll start with BJ. How you going, BJ?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here again for a great week. As you said, some really good pictures this week, good conditions for flying, and looking forward to diving into it.
And we have Todd as well. How you going, Todd?
I'm doing great, Stephanie. Glad to be here. Always fun. Definitely some awesome pictures this week. They came out really clear, and lots of changes. It's going to be a really good one.
Okay, and with that, we'll go to our usual start point and go over to Massey's here. Massey's here. Okay, now, the big thing that's very obvious this week, and we'll go straight to it, are these new tanks that have arrived. And pretty good idea that they are actually water deluge tanks. And we'll just take a look at a tweet from Le Padre here, just to show the outlet pipes of these new tanks are exactly the same as what's going on at the launch site. So that adds a bit of weight to our speculation of them being actually deluge tanks.
Yeah, and that modifications are fairly new. The placards that are on the tip of that tank, we can actually see that the newest amendments to that tank were actually signed off of on, I believe it was February 18th. So only a matter of weeks since they've added those features.
I was shocked when we saw the pictures that there were 3 tanks in there. The ground guys only caught that one going in. So when we first saw that there were 3, that was quite shocking at first.
That's a bit of a close-up of the actual modification. Yeah, we saw this one go in and they snuck 2 more in on us, didn't they?
I never saw anything else but the one. I've been curious as to where they set it, so at least this answers that question. I know it's not it's a temporary set where they're prepping them. It looks like we're still waiting to see exactly where they're going to go once they finalize set them. Suspecting towards the back, but that's still, we're not sure yet. It's still just wild speculation as of now.
Yeah, the recent pile driving activity kind of suggests that's where they may go, but once again, we can't really tell. But the whole site, though, I mean, really, that's the only really spot left that's practically a good spot for it over there. So, kind of expected to be going there, but we'll see in the near future. So we can tell here, just while we're on the tanks here, they've got some screen up, and that's to protect this tank farm from the sandblasting got going on here. We can see residue of the sandblasting down below the tanks here. I think the other photo shows it better. And so the screen there is to protect the farm. Yeah, and there's some residue of the sandblasting down here. So that's starting to clean them up. And boy, there's some heavy-duty rust on these things. My understanding these were built in the late 70s.
Yeah, I think the speculation that the rust is probably may be indicative that these were buried in their previous life. So, and it seems to be the lack of paint and rust would maybe lend some gravity to that.
Okay, and with that, we'll go over to the flame trench area. And what are your thoughts on this week? Todd, what are you seeing?
Starting in the back, you can see that the slurry wall grab is currently down in the hole digging. As we move down the wall, you can see where they were just filling the concrete in one. They're off to your left there. They've got this pipe stand. Those pipes in that stand there, in the little black stand, they get added together kind of like drill bits and lowered to the bottom. They then put the concrete in the top, and it displaces the slurry towards the top, which we can see the pump next to it, which was probably siphoning off the top. And that will, yeah, looks like they're probably finishing up on that one because there's a lot of pipes in the pipe stand. But that is them finishing up that section of wall. So every wall section finished is a wall section closer to when they can start excavating in between.
And from last week, I'll just bring up a photo from last week. We can see, where are you? We can see how they're going through, and as they're finishing section, so this section last week was finished, and this week it's completely buried, but it is down there. There is one of these sections down underneath the ground, just buried underneath, because they end up being below ground level, don't they?
Yeah, that's correct. They will be below ground level, the tops of them, and then they'll add to the top if they need to. Them, but yes, looking there, the big footprint of we suspect to be the test stand location. These walls are big. We're thinking possibly up to 8 feet above ground level, with the 4 embeds in the corner at the top. There's possibly a beam in the front there that will go over the flame trench. The flame trench will get dug out from here down. It'll be kicked out towards Mexico. So we're waiting to see them digging. But yeah, the start of what we believe is the test stand is well underway because this is beefy. It's a big guy.
And we believe that this bit of concrete here was poured solely to support the formwork here to pour this concrete. We'll call it a beam. It's actually a physical beam to help support that whole, to strengthen that whole section. And yeah, cross beam. If we look at, let's not look at McGregor. That application's playing. I apologise. At McGregor, we could see a similar beam across the front, and it's to help to stop the exhaust recirculating exhaust, as far as I've been made aware. And we've had some thoughts with Chrome Kiwi's been doing some drawing for us, and we've had a few thoughts on how this may actually work out at the end of the day with the testing.
Yeah, it's looking like the SPMTs will be on the far sides of the stand, and it'll drive it over, setting it down to bolt onto the embeds that we have currently now. Yeah, that's a great view there. Then they will drive off and everything will be prepped for static fire.
So to put this is just one idea, obviously, it's just one speculation. I'm sure there's many others out there. I think we've decided the only change to this speculation maybe to put the quick disconnect over the side. So in this configuration would be when they actually drive the ship and the transport stand onto the actual flame trench in that configuration. And then to drive down the highway, they simply could put the SPMTs under the center here so it has a narrower footprint on the highway. Was a thought for transporting them. And once again, that's just speculation. And good friend Ryan Hansen's also come up with a nice render. And here you can see the concrete beam that we were talking about earlier. And I mean the concrete beam going across and the big concrete beam going around the hole up here, which is a good render there. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, that's a good one, showing the the flame bucket that we'll get to later. But yeah, he's got it all there. Sure looks like what we're seeing as far as groundwork.
A little kicker at the end of the flame bucket here. Okay, thanks, Todd. Okay, what else up in that site? So that work's going ahead nicely. So we've got a flame trench and possibly a water deluge section. Okay, moving over to the methane tank farm. It's still looking very much like this is going to be an electrical bunker with all the pipes popping up here. And some of those pipes we already know come over to here. And here there's some electrical switchgear already put in place here. Just try and get a clearer photo. And pipe work continues all over the site in this area with some more new pipe racks put in, some plumbing here we can see added in, and it's all getting ready to start bringing plumbing over to perhaps a fluid bunker. Now, it's not sure that they need a fluids bunker at Massey's, but there's a lot of conduits still heading up in this area. Obviously, some are going to be for the water deluge area. It just seems to be like a lot of electrical in this area, so maybe we'll see a fluids bunker, maybe not.
Yeah, there just needs to be a lot of conduit for what we've got. So we're looking for more groundworks on what else they're going to be doing up there, because that's a lot of conduit heading that way.
And this actually looks like they're getting ready to concrete this whole area. Okay, moving down to the LOX and nitrogen. So we've got a liquid oxygen, a liquid nitrogen, and a gaseous high pressure nitrogen. We can see they're continuing to do some work here. And also, BJ, you noticed some other plumbing here.
Yeah, we've got a few new suspected underground lines there that'll continue parallel to the ones that have already been placed down in those trenches. Not exactly sure where they're going to connect to, since we haven't seen anything come from the other part of the farm just as of yet. But we were able to spot those nice skinny ones late yesterday. Feels like there's a few small ones in there. Where they're connect is still a little unsure, but I'm seeing some components there.
Yeah, and they could be high pressure gases for to actuate the valves. The valves, as far as I know, are actuated pneumatically. And an indicator that helps with that is these pipes, when they were put in, we noticed they have a short vertical here and a longer vertical at this end. And if we look at the shape of these, which one shows? This one shows it. There's a shorter vertical here and a longer vertical there. So, and the length, so it very much matches what's already in this trench. So they'll be going in this side. I guess we'll still see another pipe rack here and here to support them. So
yeah, it seems like it. Yeah, we've got those main lines getting in there. There's a gap there in the feed lines for some additional expansion loops.
And they have those expansion loops sitting over here, ready to go in over here. And previously, I believe they may have been making these pipes in this tent here, but I've seen a truck here unloading. So this is all prefabbed. Whether it's prefabbed at Starbase or offsite, I'm unsure. Okay, we were talking about flame trenches before and flame buckets. They've painted the flame bucket and they've added these bit of steel on the ends. We can see in the shadow here, and you can just see them up here. So they're still continuing work on this flame bucket. Which is good to see. No more locks, pumps. We saw the fourth one put in last week.
Still no change to those pads just to the left of the flame bucket. I'm still wondering what tanks are going to go there.
Yes,
Yeah, I think the best speculation is probably we'll see here in the beginning of March. There's at least one tank that is en route. It's just north of Brazil right now, coming in that matches the new tanks at the tank farm, the Orbital tank farm that seem to suggest that they'll go in there. The manifest says tanks as is in plural, but the weight of that load would suggest it's only a single tank. So we'll see.
Last week we found this little bit of what looks like deluge pipe over near the methane farm. It's been moved over here. It does show its shape a bit better this week, but still no idea exactly what it's going to be. But it seems similar to the steel they use in deluge pipes rather than anything else they used, like for instance for the cryo stuff. So good chance that's the deluge area.
Yeah, something that just kind of thought to me, I don't know if it would be big enough, but it almost kind of resembles the weir pipes over in the Deluge farm at the Orbital launch site, just on a very smaller size if they were to put some valve ports in the top of that little loop.
Except obviously the ones at the launch site are quite a lot larger, but we'll see how that pans out. Thank you. Now, last week at Massey's, we didn't pick up that we have these sections here, and in another photo you can see them from the top, and we speculate that they are for whatever's getting built in here, and they match the angles. So there's 12 beds here, being 12, which is a multiple of 6. It kind of leads us to think that it's ship related. That's ship with a P. And they seem to be exactly the right angles to fit the angle it makes in this arc here. Seem to fit the angles we have seen on these parts here. So it's going to be interesting to see what becomes of that. What do you think that may be, BJ?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, I know at one point we were thinking potential that tent was erected to build a structure for that new pad over by where the can crusher was. But I think seeing some of these other components, we think maybe it's the early beginnings of a ring for the actual static fire test clamps or structure. Maybe having some kind of structure similar to what like the booster transport stands have, where the booster would actually sit within that ring. We're going to have to get lucky on an open tent day maybe to be able to get some more confirmation on what's going on in there.
Yeah, when you look at the pictures from last week, those blocks look like just squares. I mean, that you can, as we look closer, you can start to see some shape, but they're definitely curved. So yeah, I agree that they should be fitting on there. And my speculation is also the start of the test stand. I was hoping, I would have liked to have just seen at least 2 on the stands just to see how they fit together. Are there any gaps? Do they go straight together? We suspect they're going to go straight together, but it sure would have been nice to just see a little bit. But no, they knew we were coming probably and hid it from us.
Yep.
Probably not, but they hid it from us good anyways.
And last week we did see these and were speculating what they were, and it seems like they may have been used underneath these tanks here as temporary supports. And I'm not sure whether these ones are a bit odd, these two, but anyway, they do make use of materials they have around the place, don't they? So still no idea on this pad here, although this week we can actually see the embeds a lot better, and they're pouring concrete around it. So it's a 5-sided figure, which we haven't seen anywhere with anything. Being 5, multiple 5 still sort of indicates something to a booster, but we haven't actually have any idea what that's going to be yet.
Yeah, the speculation on that pad is as uncertain as it ever has been since the very beginning of them digging that out.
And this week hasn't shown much light at all. Okay, Joe, any questions or donations, please, from Macy's?
Indeed. I want to thank Todd Bernal, our very own, for a $10 all aboard, choo-choo, and Methane Man for gifting 5 memberships, and One Bug for gifting a membership, and a question from Ravshin Nazarov. How long do you think it'll take for them to finish the flame trench? I don't know. Any of us have that answer?
Yeah, you're right. It is hard to say. I would not be surprised if they're done within the next month to month and a half of the actual slurry wall. Then it's digging out will probably happen pretty quick. They might start pinning everything back because they've got water pressure from all sides, so that'll take a little time. But the overall finish, it's just too hard to say. I think we can just go step by step and try to make our best guesses at the next step, how long it'll take. And I'm thinking 30 to 45 days before the wall's done.
Personally, I think it's going to happen a lot quicker than some people might think. They tend to throw everything at these sort of projects, so I'm pretty sure it'll happen fairly quickly. But a bit of patience, maybe 6 months, maybe 7 months or so. I think less than a year anyway, and more than 6 months perhaps. Thanks, Joe.
Question from Moody Blues just came in. How many acres is Massey's?
That's a good question. I don't actually know off the top of my head.
It's that big by that big because I'm not sure on the actual size myself.
I'll have to get someone to go on to Google Earth or something and use one of the tools to actually work that out, please. That's a good question. Let me just check over here in voice comms. Does anyone there know? No one so far. Thank you, Joe.
And my question bot is clear. It is working today.
Well, that's good news. So anything else, Todd or BJ, you want to cover at the Macy's? I'll move over to Sanchez.
I don't think so. I think and as far as I've seen, I think we've touched on all the major points that we've been able to make out on that one.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're good.
Awesome. Okay, moving over to Sanchez then. Let's get a close shot down here. There's still a lot of plumbing staged. I think we see more cryo pipes this week. I guess will be a lot to do with the tower and for the plumbing going on at the launch site. We see these are like a container for transporting stuff. They came in empty, so we're presuming that they're manufacturing parts in here for either Macy's or the launch site or the actual tower. So they'll be transporting parts in these containers.
Hey, real quick, Steph, going back to that question, it looks like it's 21 acres. We had someone look it up for us, and it looks like it's just a little over 21 acres.
Good stuff. Thanks, whoever did that. Appreciate it. There are some racks down here that have been moved over here, so starting to organise things out here a bit so we don't have all this stuff flying around everywhere, just to tidy things up. A bit of drainage work is just about finished here. There's this last bit to tidy up here, and here's a little bit here to tidy up. We can see the plumbing in here, which is good to see. Over to the ring manufacturing area. No real visible change on that transport stand this week. What are they unloading?
It seems
Go on.
Seems stalled out on that one. I don't know if they just don't need it or if they're waiting for something, but yeah, hasn't been gaining too much traction lately. It's kind of been sitting there.
Yeah, we haven't seen any assemblies for the alignment pins, which seems to be the only the remaining component that it's needing yet. A couple weeks ago, we saw the handrails were missing temporarily there. It looks like perhaps that they're just waiting and they've got those temporary handrails still in place until they get what they need.
Very good. Now we've got this mystery item, what do you think, BJ?
Well, it's certainly one of my latest thoughts was we noticed before they skinned it that it had 3 clamp receivers, indicative of the bottom of a ship or a bottom of the hot stage ring, more in particular. And then when they covered it, it kind of dawned on me that perhaps what they needed was some form of a protection for booster storage outside, rain protection. After we saw all of the grid fin motors be replaced on Booster 9, it might be advantageous that if they need to, when they start having too many boosters to store indoors, if they need to do that outdoor storage without a hot stage ring to protect it, that they would just have an item like this to put on top. The fact that they've covered over those things kind of starts leading away from some of the speculation of a hot stage ring stand or anything like that. So that's kind of the wild speculation I've got on it. I'm sure there's a few other options, but I just don't see with the clamp receivers.
Well, thank you. Okay, now that new ship install. This is the third ship engine install stand. So number 2 has been installed in Mega Bay 2. So creating a third ship installation or just ship engine. It's not just for installation of ship engines. It's also there for to do maintenance work as well.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of used the discussions that that those rings, kind of even going back to the booster ones when we first saw that it was engine related, but it's obvious that even going into the booster ones that they're much more general purpose. Obviously, the lifts are very specific for being able to make easy installation of engines, but they definitely have more than just an engine use for that nomenclature.
Yeah, there's a lot of plumbing and so on. They've got to manage under there as well. I just came back to that ring. I mean, it may even be a transport jig. There's so many different theories as to what this could be. There's a little bit of a mock-up from, and once again, we all put question marks on what we say because we really don't know yet. But it's good to see a few options out there.
Yeah, before the skin was put on, I think those graphics from Kiwi were definitely right on par. So I think we'll just have to give it a little bit more time and see what they develop into.
And there's going to be more because there's some spare parts still around. So there's going to be more than one at least.
Yeah, we believe we've seen rings and panels for what may be as many as 3 of them.
Yes, I think so. Okay, moving on to this mystery item. They've done some painting on it. I can't see much other. And this ring, they've added some kind of ring in here. Last week we saw those pieces sitting nearby, just over here, and now they seem to be welded on both sides. I thought that was a shadow, but the more I look at it, the more it's not a shadow. It's actually steel. And Chrome Kiwi put this little thing together, little drawing together, just to give us an idea of what it actually looks like. It's not highly detailed, but it shows the details of what we can actually see in our photos, which isn't a great deal. So well done for Chrome Kiwi for getting that out with the small amount of information that we have. Thank you. Now, moving over to, where is it? This photo will do. To this next area where we saw that item in here, with the radial beams on it. It seems to have been moved. It was there, yeah. But there's still parts around for it, for another one here, and there's the the rings for the center and the floor panels still laying around. Perhaps there's a better photo. Hang on. Might have been the best one. Hang on.
That one seems to have disappeared. I'm afraid that the triangle one's going to do the same thing. They're going to get it close. We're never going to know what it is. It's going to disappear into the factory, and we're going to just be scratching our heads until somebody gets a tour and we can figure out what they're using them for. But hopefully we'll get some more information and be able to figure out what they are, because it leads to wild speculation. And it's a lot of fun and conversations in the show and tells trying to figure it out, but I still want to know what they are.
Yeah, I think with that one, I think the thing that we have to look forward to on that one is that we should have we're thinking 3 more opportunities to maybe catch some other ones in various states of assembly that we can maybe start deciphering.
Yeah, looking at last week, we're talking about this item. And we can see the rings down here and the plates a little bit clearer in this photo. We also noticed this week only one of these is missing. There's three here, 1, 2, 3. So whatever this is was only used one of these, which we worked out of the same diameter, but just different lengths. So yeah, in our show and tells, we tend to go through and look at things pixel by pixel and try and work out the size of things and how things relate to each other, and we can spend an hour talking about something like that, which we don't normally do on live streams and so on, but that's where our show and tell shows are really good fun. We get into quite some in-depth sort of conversations about them, so please consider joining Patreon and come and joining us in show and tells. It's a really good session. Okay, let's move on to the tower sections. Not that photo. We'll try this photo. No, sorry. There we go. This photo will do. Okay, tower sections. And we have a shot from the port in a second. So this week, BJ, you're saying something about this put in here.
Yeah, we could see it in last week's flyover from a couple of angles, but most of them it was kind of hidden in some spots. But that's actually not the fifth column per se, but it's the extension of the foot column, which is off screen there, the one that goes underneath the shiv beam. And then that little one is just the piece that goes from that shiv beam all the way up to the top roof. It just creates that fourth corner. And since it doesn't carry any structural loads other than the roof itself, it's just a nice small little one. We've been looking for it for a number of weeks, just like we have the three main columns of the 9th section. So it seems like all of the pieces for section 9 are by and large on site now and ready for assembly at some point.
So you're saying the fourth one of these legs is made up of this part, and then this part stacked on top, and then this part stacked on top again.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. That is the part of the tower that faces towards the launch mount.
And over here at the port, what we're looking at here, we got section 1, I believe.
Yeah, in the middle there is section 1, and then section 7's been sitting there off to the right ever since it arrived a couple months ago. Section number 2 there is over by the crane, and then sections 3 and 6 are in the back there. 3 is on the right, and 6 is on the left.
And we don't believe these are SpaceX parts, they're just stuff that arrived as well for other people, perhaps.
The one thing I noticed on the 6 and 7 is they've got tabs for the cladding. So it's possibly cladding all the way to the top.
Yeah, it seems like even when you look at I believe even the beams over in Sanchez right now for section 8, how they also have the tabs just like the Pad A tower has.
But there's tabs on the current tower that aren't being used, is that correct?
Yeah, at this point, correct. I would suspect similar to the Falcon Tower at 39A, they'll probably use it uncladded for some period of time, and then eventually they'll probably put some cladding on it.
Cool. Just put some reference those tower sections here at the Port of Brownsville, where on this dock here. Thank you. Okay, back to Sanchez. Okay, so the tower section's coming along nicely. Okay, trying to remember where everything is.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that's in the corner of this one of the things that we saw this week was that the 3 Tesla Megapacks that were over by the village have now been relocated as part of the power infrastructure here in Sanchez.
They're from the old tracking station, yeah. This area here we thought may have been a place for the fire trucks is definitely not that anymore. So we've got the carbon dioxide tank that was behind the water deluge system at the launch site that wasn't used. It was too small. And 2 new tanks that look like they're going to be sitting on this pad. Some vaporizers. And this tank was moved just from here where they're breaking up the old pedestals for it here. This tank's almost finished. So it's fairly interesting how they build these. There's jacks on the inside of these tanks. They'll jack the tank up, put in a row of panels, and then jack it up again, put in another row of panels, and they're using this last panel, I guess, as an access hatch. So we can see that,
I think actually to comment on the jacks, if you look at that trailer that's just outside the opening, I believe those are actually the jacks sitting sideways on top of that little pull behind trailer.
Okay, it was Creeper before that gave us that acreage, thank you. Hey, they're still pulling apart that crane. They haven't seemed to have made much progress on that crane this week. And they still haven't started demolishing this ship install stand, which, considering they're removing this crane, we can pretty well say this isn't going to get used ever again. So we expect to see that being scrapped very soon. We've got a scrapped ring section. There was a ring section here last week has been scrapped. And still they haven't scrapped the hot stage ring test articles yet. So I'm wondering why they're hanging around. Okay, what else is it, Sanchez? I guess we expect to see these tower sections all nicely lined up here in the very near future. So the new parking lot is coming along. We'll get another shot of this when we go to the build site. But the crane's been making its way around slowly through the car park. This photo shows all the cars parked out the front now because of the parking lot. And I guess it's a fair old walk for some of these employees all the way over there. They almost
I
need
really think they're going to enjoy the new parking structure, not having to walk as far.
Oh, I reckon for sure. We can see a missing turntable here that's been put into Mega Bay 2, and that'll be for ship construction turntable. We still see that, I guess they won't need this anymore at this site. The platform they use to lift engines up under this test stand, I guess it'll still get used at the launch site from time to time because that can go under the test pad B. But I guess test pad B's days are numbered as well. So
between that and the fact that they've got a second truck that is actually out at the launch site right now, it's definitely seen its limited days at this point.
Okay, we'll get some more questions and donations, please, Joe.
Absolutely. I want to thank Jax for a gifted membership, as well as Yazada for a $10 super chat. Keep RGV in the air. Steve Coates, $1.99, couple bucks for the cause. A good question from Crane Man. Could the pointy dark patch of concrete at Sanchez represent the future storage position of one of the chopsticks for Launch Tower 2? Great show, he says. Thank you, Crane Man.
I guess you're talking about this section here. Now, giving the overall site here, so we've got a tower section here and here, and there's more along here and here. So it does leave this whole area here for things like chopsticks and the SQD arm. So they're concreting all over the place. So there are spots. I mean, they have to keep this area clear for the SPMTs to come through from the rocket garden. So yeah, that's a good possibility that they'll stage those parts right here, Crane Man. Good to hear from you. Thanks.
And a related question coming in just now from Moody Blues. Will they build a new ship QD and chopsticks at Sanchez or bring the old ones from Florida?
Have you heard anything about that, BJ?
I don't think we've heard anything specific. We have seen some ramp up in work on all of that associated hardware at the Cape from some other outlets. So it does seem that that's going to come here. The chopsticks obviously would be the third set that's already built at KSC because the second set's already on that tower. The ship quick disconnect arm is the one would be the biggest question mark, because we've not seen a third one started, because the tower there at LC-39 does not have its arm yet. So I think we've just stolen that one potentially for Boca, and then they'll build another one down the road for there.
Thank you, Joe. Any more?
That is a clear cue for me. We can move on to the build site.
Okay, thank you everyone for your donations and the membership donations. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll go over to the build site. Okay, the build site, we'll start at Mega Bay 2 like we normally do. And we can see they've finishing off the roof here. They've got half the flashing. The Americans call it something different, I think. And they finished the roof and the fascias of the elevator tops. So I just got confused. So I was trying to find the access hole for these workers, but they're using this ladder, aren't they? We're expecting to see another access hatch up here somewhere for the roof, like we see on Mega Bay 1 here. So looking inside, so that turntable isn't at that position. So we're guessing that the turntable was put in and turned to the right anyway. So somewhere on the right-hand side is a new turntable. And there's some cladding up here, which we're not sure of. Do you have any ideas on this, BJ?
Well, the latest evidence that I've seen since the flyover, the left-hand portion of that lower section has also been removed. And we can see in that photo that there is a cutout, it appears, there at the ground level, probably for a pedestrian doorway. Some other views from live cams down there suggest that on the left-hand side that's still cladded, the upper center of that section, to still to the right of the doorway, Stephanie, but in the section that doesn't have cladding but is in this picture, there has been a cutout probably about 6 foot square up above head level that suggests potentially some type of, probably not a window, but I would expect maybe air handler intake or something like that.
It's an unusual placement at the front, but I guess it's quite possible. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
An interesting little detail is they're starting to drill holes in all this concrete to start breaking it apart behind Mega Bay 2 and over in this section, which some people are going Mega Bay 3, so not sure. Could be, might not be, we'll see. But at least they're breaking up the concrete here to clear land for some kind of work.
Yeah, it seems like they had been cleaning out the dirt area prior to this. They were storing a few things there. The 2-point lifter stand is there. The ring is there. But it seemed like even before this, they really started cleaning that whole area out. So it's, yeah, I'm wondering what's going to happen up in there.
We saw the lifting rig stand come back from the launch site. It was a bit confusing. And they swapped the ship transport stand. This is the ship transport stand that 28 went to the launch site on. It's come back, and another ship transport stand is up at the launch site now for 28. So it kind of leads us to think that we may see ship 29 on here very soon, and then they can put the lifting frame that's inside Mega Bay 2 down onto this stand. It's a bit confusing why that got moved over here. Okay, the bays, we can't really see in the bays, which is not good. You notice in Mega Bay 1 though that there's the scary lifts, the wind lifts, and they were working on the left-hand side. So maybe they're doing some work in here to construct or deconstruct High Bay.
Yeah, that position of the truck definitely was kind of a question mark to me this morning when I was seeing it from another angle, because it was just kind of hiding there. I think I have seen some work over on the upper portions of the ships, and perhaps they've just got it set over there and kind of lifting over the top from a distance so that they still have access for the scissor lifts that are obviously working on both of those ships as they sit.
Okay, that sounds a bit more logical than pulling the High Bay apart. We can just see some engine stands under here. It's going to be a real thing now. The doors are there. So I guess in comments, people are going to be saying boo to the doors. And yeah, you're right. Boo to the doors. But we know it's going to help the quality control and make it a bit more professional. Just while we're here, before we move on to the factory area, we can see the drilling rig better in this photo. And we can see the office buildings are still there. Hang on. And we might just move over to the office, to the new Star Factory. When we're on the Star Factory here, we're going to have a quick look at the live cams here on the stream. So I'll see you when you come back from the live cams. I'm trying to work out how I can see what's going on the live cams. So live cams we've got set up down there. We can keep an eye on the building. We can keep an eye on ship and booster movement, and when SBMTs and other equipment come back and forwards. And you'll see from time to time. You'll see these in our weekly videos. I can see the delay video there. I can see some extra work here they're adding on here. I see at the front here, BJ. I can see some of the columns you've been looking for, and we're back.
Yeah, we've finally seen some more truss columns come in. They've started the next set that continues the tallest portion of the Star Factory towards the Stargate building. I'm really curious to see a few things. We've actually seen a third style of truss column in here, so I'm very curious to see where they're going to go. There's some structure that perhaps means that shows that it's not a truss column from the concrete all the way up. It's like the truss column starts partial up with maybe an overhang or something. Maybe even for that little angled wall that we've seen develop the last couple of weeks. So definitely looking forward to I like watching the building go up. So it's definitely something that piques my interest outside of some of the other things around the site.
Okay, I think this photo shows some of those different beams. This one is particularly different, you were saying, and
yeah, there's that one. There's a taller one there right in the middle of the frame going in there. We see there's three of the main beams are stacked on their end right there. That's one of the skinny ones is in the middle of two of the wider ones. And we can see some of those other pieces that extend those up that have the parapet walls. There's a couple of them here. They're very haphazardly placed, it seems. I don't know how they make sense of how they've stationed some of this stuff.
Looks like sort of normal sort of SpaceX sort of style, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, and we've got onto the side of the building where they're adding this extra piece. You were talking about cladding before. Let me have a look. I'll find a better photo. But you were talking about cladding before.
Yeah, we've seen our flyover was able to catch the first piece of cladding. Essentially, there's a double column at one of the junctions between different segments of the Star Factory, and we can see that one segment's been in there, and there's a stack of it sitting on the ground right below it, and a number of other stacks suspected around around that same area along the rails or the fence lines there. So yeah, that's the first piece. I think at this point they've got upwards of a dozen or so of those panels in, working their way towards the left, and it'll be interesting to see what the final finish is. We've seen a few different ground photos from on site, and there's some uncertainty on if that's the final surface or if there's going to be another surface, and that's just like an insulation panel.
So it looks like that's the pack of panels there with the color and more packs of panels over here. So that part of the building is coming along nice. They're really going very quickly with this part of the building. I mean, they have been all the way along. There's some more concrete poured. They're almost all the way through. This is halfway through tent 3. They're almost all the way through. We've noticed some conduit work as well going to the... looks like it's coming from this main trench of conduit, perhaps even into it. some of the older sections, or perhaps there's some stations here that need power. They seem to be going into the old section, some of it. So perhaps it's more redundancy power coming through, or maybe there's some machinery now they're building more and more. They're changing what's going on in that part of the building. Anyway, there's some more conduit work going on. This
I got a
little...
question. Oh, go ahead,
Go for
BJ.
it. No, you're right, go for it.
I was going to ask a question, BJ. Do you think the walls will come down on the inside, or are they going to keep them as different lanes and different like departments, I guess you could say, inside? I'm not sure about that one, but like where the first one was, the first building is, and where tent 3 was, you think that'll come down, or is that going to stay up?
Yeah, it's a real good question. I think I don't know that I have. I think I'm about. It could be a coin toss for me on that one. I could see a lot of those sections just keeping them partitioned, especially if they have different areas of manufacturing that are going to take place. Also, some discussions been they're not built as firewalls, but obviously a little bit of segregation between different areas could potentially be a good thing. But there's definitely a good possibility with the lack of insulation on some of the walls that they were put up much more on a temporary basis.
Good question, Todd. Thank you, BJ. Okay, we'll move on to this office building. And if you're confused about what's going on with these footings, well, don't feel bad, because even our resident expert building and architecture expert, Phil Kidd, is totally confused by these footings. They're quite massive. They're an odd shape. They're in an odd position. There's odd footings in between. And Phil Kidd's had a lot of experience on a lot of buildings, and this is something he hasn't seen. So don't feel bad if you're confused. For the size of the footing, the embeds are tiny, or vice versa. For the size
Yeah,
of
there's just like, what, 3 small embeds in there, I think?
for the size of the embeds, the footings are huge. Phil is leading sort of only real explanation you can find so far is maybe there's going to be a counterbalance, cantilever part out the front of the building. Another guess is that maybe this is some kind of engineering workshop and they need something very solid underneath, and perhaps there'll be more office over here and more engineering department over here. Another thought is that the soil is really poor here, although normally they would, but still Phil Kidd doesn't think that's the reason these are the way they are, because normally there's a different way. They put piles in. It was going to be just poor soil, so very confusing, these footings.
I believe they poured
that.
Yep, I was just going to say about that one. I believe that one was poured last night. BJ, did you say it was pouring for 5 hours? Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, from Sentinel Cam, I was able to look at it. It looked like they started pouring around 4 o'clock this morning, and they wrapped it up around 9:30 on that last one. So they made quick work of the rest of that rebar cage, because our photos obviously it doesn't seem like it's quite complete there enough for a pour, but they definitely were pouring overnight.
And I was asking Phil about this pumping the water out, and they're pumping the water out only while they're doing the construction to keep water out of these footings. And once the construction work's complete, they'll remove this plumbing, this water. This is sucking water out of the ground, and water will make its way back in here eventually. You can't pump the earth dry, was his comment. Okay, let's go over to the village, I guess. Before we go to the village, over the back here, they've been building a wall. I think we touched on it last week. And it's quite a solid piece of construction. Let's find a photo from the other side.
Yeah, in this photo, we can see that section in the middle there that doesn't have any formwork was a set, and then the segment on the far left was poured last week, and we saw that in last week's flyover. They've continued on with that. We've kind of been able to tell that it's just a continuation of that concrete grade from behind the other section of Star Factory, perhaps a retaining wall just to maximize their space up to the property lines.
Yeah, this photo here, we can see they're just bringing the edge of the property up to grade here. And as you can see, they like to use every square inch of the area they have, because land is quite limited here. And also for some protection from sea surges and soil erosion mitigation. And it's going to have drainage with these pipes. Oh, where'd they go? Maybe they're already installed. Last week there was some pipes here that they must have already been put in, BJ.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to scroll back to see what last week's looked like. Interesting.
Let me just have a quick look last week.
Yeah, using as much land as possible is obviously they're going to be their best thing they can possibly do, because they're only limited to so much, and putting this wall in here will give them a few extra feet. But like in that other picture, you can see, I mean, it's enough for 4 containers to be stacked up. So then you could go the length of the wall. It's a lot of room. It doesn't look like much, but it's a lot of room.
Yeah, last week there was a stack of pipes here, and I'm pretty sure these are the pipes that you can put in a trench to allow water into the pipe to drain water away. I didn't notice.
Are you thinking of the French drain?
They're still there in this week's flyover. They're just
Yeah, they're there.
left there. I think we're just looking from other directions that I think we just got turned around.
Okay, apologise. You're right. Sorry about that. So yeah, they're making good headway on that brick wall. From this photo, they look more like solid pipes, so just interesting. So they've been slowly putting these stormwater drains in over the past few weeks and creating this drainage here, stormwater drain, which should just go out into the wetlands here. And we thought they were not hooked up yet, but we can see they're actually hooked up here. And perhaps they just go in and out of the building there. I have no idea why. But then you can see these pipes are hooked up. And they've got to go around these electrical bunkers here, so the pipes here are a little bit different here and there. And for some reason, they've exposed the electrical conduits here. Not quite sure why yet. But these electrical bolts have come all the way from Sanchez, the power station over at Sanchez, come all the way over here and continue on. So that's interesting. I have to keep an eye on this little area in the future. Okay, let's can go over to the village now. In the village, we see more construction continuing, some road work and some curb and guttering, more and more curb and guttering going in with the stormwater drain holes for the curb and guttering. The house is getting finished up and started. They've almost finished the housework in here. So the next few weeks we'll see that complete. Except for these few spots that SpaceX don't own just yet.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the progress there, especially to see the different stages, because you got a couple plots there that have just some ground structure work on foundations, and then you've got a few that have slabs that haven't been built on, and there's just a nice variety of the process being shown throughout all those plots.
Yeah, they'll be having a crew go through doing footings and then concrete, then the chippies, the carpenters to put up the frames, the sparkies, electricians to come in. I've worked in the electrical industry doing houses like this, and you go literally from house to house. It's good fun.
Yeah, it won't be long until all the streets are done too. They're got moved along there.
Yeah, there's some nice road work going along, and I'm sure the crews are very thankful for the bitumen and concrete going in. Seems I've had to put up with so much mud over the winter with all the rain. Mud on job sites is not fun. There's continuing groundwork in here. Still not sure what's going to go in here, but they're still doing some groundwork to level it out. This being the old solar farm. We can see the power packs are missing from here, which are now over at Sanchez, which we touched on before. And for the crane people, the crane bits and pieces have moved. They've moved over to the development site.
Yeah, we can barely this particular site can barely be considered a crane yard anymore, as we've referred to it as, mostly given the fact that pretty much all the crane components, other than occasional crane storage itself, all the extra booms and extension lattice and all that stuff have been moved over here now.
I was supposed to come here during Massey's. I apologise. That's the crane bits. So this is more the crane yard now. And I was just going to mention those two tanks haven't been installed yet. So going back to the building site. Yeah, it'd be called an SPMT yard, but even the SPMTs aren't here. They're normally parked in here somewhere. It's looking quite bare at the moment, actually. The wall we saw behind the factory before is very similar to the wall that we see down here, and this is how it's going to end up. They built a wall here and then backfilled it with dirt and concrete over the top. That's once again to build the whole site up to the very top of the concrete height, and so they can use every last metre of land they have.
Yeah, and we can see the crews there. They're continuing to work on getting the it looks like some attachment points for the posts. They were working on the fence lines on the other side of the pad last week. It seems like they're just continuing their process all the way around, putting some protection there so nobody falls off the edge and turns into a lawsuit.
Across here, I see. And the observation thing's out again.
Yeah, they put it on top of that little circle structure we saw last week with the Lowe's wrap on it.
So it's a Lowe's observatory, yeah?
Sponsored by.
Now you're talking. Okay, we got any donations and questions on the build site, please, Joe?
I want to thank Jonathan McD for gifting a membership. Ulrich Miller for a €10 super chat for the rent of the office space in the new office building. Thanks for that. Rocket Profit, $10 super chat. Yeah, what Ulrich said. Choo choo. And that is all. I do have another super chat for the launch site later, but no current questions in the queue.
Okay, thank you all for your questions and donations. Really appreciate it. Okay, we're a little ahead of time. We'll go over to the launch site. We've got a few things to talk about over there. Let me just find a launch site for you. Okay, so the big thing about the launch site, we might just go straight into that, BJ, is this little area here.
Yeah, it looks like the temporary asphalt storage area has been cleaned out because that was not there that long.
Yeah, definitely. The kind of asphalt's gone away. We've seen some news this week from the Army Corps of Engineers. They've put out a public notice that SpaceX has reinitiated the development plans for them to expand into some wetlands, and by some I mean very small amount of wetlands. But what we've seen them document here is that mystery little strip of wetlands that's kind of between the crane, what has been just a general storage area, and the parking lot that is no longer. They've put in an application for that 0.16 of an acre to be able to develop that. It's a deviation from the original plans that they had put in and that had been withdrawn in March of 2022 to expand. They were going to expand about 17.16 acres to expand to the south of the launch site, but they've expanded now and they've changed that plan to just use that one little strip. The benefit of that is the fact that that strip only it keeps them underneath the limit that the most recent EIS had them approved. They were approved for 5.5 acres at the launch site. And this little development will keep them under that number. So there's no need for an updated EIS. So hopefully we'll see some approvals get pushed real quick through this. This notice that the Army Corps had put out is just a public notice saying that they're open for public comment essentially through the 24th of March for anyone who may have complaints about it or otherwise. And hopefully the small amount of space will allow them to just move forward with this, since we do believe that this is going to be the future launch, the future site of the tower and pad for Orbital Pad B.
Very good. Thank you very much, BJ. So yeah, that adds a lot of weight to speculation of Tower B being here. And there's so much speculation about tank farm positions, where they're going to use a second tank farm or whether this is enough for both launch sites, or there's going to be another tank farm in here. My personal speculation is there could be another tank farm in here with another electrical bunker in here, only because we see a lot of conduit work underground here as this was getting built over the last few months. So it sort of makes me think there's going to be a new electrical bunker in here, perhaps. And much like over on this side, pretty well a mirror of this side. So electrical bunker over here, somewhere in this area, and fluids bunker and berm and everything. I mean, it could be that, like I say, it could be that they're going to share the one tank farm between both sites. So anyone's guess at the moment what's going to happen over here, and love to hear comments in the chat about what's going on with that, and see if there's any newer speculation.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where I think since the groundwork will be some of the first things, we might be able to get some ideas on what that may look like. I think there is some validity to all those ideas that a separate tank farm would make sense, but given the fact that on a lot of launch sites that tanks are quite a ways away from their pads, I could very much see them trying to utilize one tank farm for both pads and just putting in some cross piping from one pad to the other to figure out some way to use it as one.
Yeah, and adding this little strip's going to make it a lot easier to put the actual whole tower anywhere from here. I'm thinking somewhere here, similar to here. The distance between the tower and the OLM from the road here, I think will end up being a similar distance. And basically, I'm thinking basically a mirror image of that whole side could just be mirrored over here. And perhaps the deluge farm somewhere else, like in here, somewhere out of the way, because obviously it can't go in here yet. So perhaps somewhere in here. And it sort of makes this building here look like it's in a bit of danger of fire with its open side on this side. Speaking of which, looks like they've cleared all of the formwork off it and all of the supports, and some insulation has been seen going into this building. So that's moving ahead. It's the very strong amenities block, we think. The tank at Sanchez, we said carbon dioxide tank, was sitting here for a long time, and it was never plumbed in, and we think that they had the carbon dioxide tank over here, and perhaps they thought this tank plus this tank would be enough carbon dioxide, but instead they scrapped both those tanks and installed this carbon dioxide system right over here. And that's carbon dioxide for the booster, I guess, and ships, fire retention system, engine bay flushing, purging. We've noticed MVAC trucks coming in, filling up the Deluge Farm over the last week, and then also taking water away from the retention pond here. And I've got a slight speculation that there was a leak, or there could be an overflow. I think someone mentioned in show and tell there's an overflow pipe in here, so perhaps that's what this water is here. It doesn't come from anywhere over here, but that's just a sideline thing. And there's a lot of water that's flowing. We can tell it's flowing over here and out there. There's a fair bit of water. But I'd say it's just overflow, to be honest. I thought maybe there might have been a problem with the last deluge tests, but it's probably just overflow water. Okay, moving on to the launch table. I was just after the last flyover, they reinstalled the alignment jig here. So BJ, there's been a few things for alignment, hasn't there? Actually,
Yeah, we've seen that. We saw that be assembled there, and then one of the biggest things that we've seen is the work on the left chopstick there at the bottom of the screen, actually, and they'll eventually get to the other one. But there's been some quite significant surgery done on both the stabilizer pin as well as the ship lifting pin, actually. It seems they've run into some form of an alignment issue while trying to stack ships. That they needed those pins to shift just a little bit closer to the tower. We're not quite sure exactly what it is, but we have seen kind of during stacking that the ship is not nice and perpendicular to the booster as they start the mating process. So it seems like they need a little bit more angle adjustment or some kind of movement to maybe fix some of the stacking issues that seem to take a long time. The amount of time that it takes to actually seat a ship to the booster has been rather lengthy. So looking like they've had to shift those pieces, and we'll see if that speeds up the process in the future.
Early on, Elon and Sam Patel had talked about the being off angled, and they were shimming it back then. And I'm wondering if it got worse or if they just weren't able to shim enough to make it, and it's over time it's causing too many issues. It was kind of shocking to see what they were doing.
There's a bit of speculation going around that maybe the tower has moved a little tiny bit towards the tower. The OLM's moved towards the tower a little bit, and sort of adding a little bit of weight to that, maybe after launch one, with it all being dug out, and the tower avoidance maneuver putting a lot of weight on this side could have perhaps moved the table a little bit, and they put up with it for launch 2, and before launch 3 now they're actually going to do something about it. But that's still wild speculation.
Yeah, I think there's a few of those different ideas floating around on why they needed to do it. I seem to be more on some of the initial things that perhaps the perfect level was not achieved initially, and it's always been there. And I think that IFT1 certainly could have made the situation worse from all the excavation that they did underneath there inadvertently. So. I think all we can see is to wait and see if it at least makes things better for whatever purpose it is that they actually did the change to it.
Yeah, so I don't think we'll ever get an answer from that either through SpaceX.
I really wish Elon would do another one of those spaces where he allowed us to ask questions and stuff, because that was really nice, and this would definitely be a good question to ask.
So out here we see some marks on the ground, and it could be for that. It's a bit of concrete work they're doing on the edges. It's a little bit of a funny shape, it's the only thing. And there's more of it down here. They're marking out. So they're going to reclaim some of this land in here, which they've probably already got permission to do.
Yeah, it certainly looks
So,
like a couple of those look like they could be somehow marking berm extensions. I know that one, the very first one you showed at the top, does. I could really envision seeing some additional ramping work done there. We've seen a lot of the water deluge seems to do a fair bit of erosion to the wetlands just outside that concrete wall. So I could see them at some point needing to do some further mitigations so that we don't end up pulling all the dirt out of underneath the concrete.
so similar to this work here, which still needs to be finalised before Flight 3, we imagine, because we all know what happens if you get a plume going underneath concrete, don't we?
Yeah, it seems odd in this that they still haven't even finished any of the rebar work to continue that all the way across that new wall that they've seemed to have purposely stopped at that one angled section. So it seems odd. Obviously, I would imagine that we're going to see concrete in there in the coming days.
By the next flyover, for sure. I might even see what's going on here by the next flyover. Okay. Moving on to the tank farm. The main thing I saw this week was some pedestals put into these spots where we saw some trenches dug last week. And they may be for the vaporizers to go on here. We still don't know for sure yet. And it makes sense to have the vaporizers up off the ground to allow air circulation underneath them.
Yeah, I initially was questioning whether they would be for vaporizers just because they seem like they're an awfully far distance away. But we did see the arrival of that one really large vaporizer earlier this week that might lend some more positive thoughts to that. Because the four that were previously brought that are there that you can see in this photo up at the D2 gate certainly don't look big enough to span that, in my opinion.
I believe there'd be a rack on top of this, perhaps, to hold the vaporizers. Or we're getting a massive vaporizer. And we saw a tank get put in here through the week. A little bitty tank. In amongst all those tanks, there's this little, I mean, it's quite a big tank, I guess, on its own, but up against these tanks, it looks like a little tiny mini-me.
Yeah, and if we find a photo, Stephanie, just at the end of the new tank row, we can actually see that really large one. It's roughly a 37 foot long, tall, if it was placed upright, vaporizer that did arrive. It was the only one on that flatbed. It was on a low deck, so we could really easily estimate what its size is. You can just see it in the shadow of the ninth tank. Next to the white pickup truck.
Okay, so I'm good from the other side. Just while I'm on this way, the tank that was lifted, was that tank, wasn't it? Was lifted into the...
Yes, that is the tank that was placed on the old water pad.
Now, has this one got a fan under it? No.
No, the ground photos that we saw of that one, it's just like those other smaller ones, completely just air vaporizers.
Okay, so work continue. Put the new two tanks in here. Now, there's some ground photos here of these bolts down here. They're a bit crooked and a bit ugly looking, but anyway, they're there nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a rather interesting one there. Those two tanks and the four vaporizers there at the entrance there all kind of showed up on the same day. A bit curious to see if those vaporizers are associated with those tanks or if they're for somewhere else. They're that new pad that was poured just underneath the tank, and then in front there you can kind of see the new one to the right of that comms hut. Looks like it could be there. I know we also see that also formwork for a new one. What might be a for electrical transformers going in right there as well.
Yeah, this I like the idea. It's being transformed with high tension in and normal voltage out, and it's made here same again, high tension in and normal voltage out. The ground photos we saw, I'm not trying to bring them up. We saw these little items out the front here. They're under each one of these tanks. And you had an explanation for them, BJ?
Yeah, I think this is fairly speculative. I really need to look at it in more detail from above. But each one of the tanks has these, and given the tank outputs as well as the amount of pipes that come in and out of the farm, I'm suspecting that these are some form of essentially cryo switch gear, essentially. So it's a switching manifold that could be used for the process of either tanking or detanking of the vehicles. As I believe from the notations I've seen on the tanks, they have specific fill and specific drain ports. However, within the tank farm itself, SpaceX uses a common fill drain port for the vehicles. So I'm assuming that this device down here is taking that single item and it's either allowing it to either pull from the drain port of the tank, and then if they're in a detanking situation, they can then backfill it into a different port, depending on how those fluids have to be routed inside the tank.
Thank you. We can see we're continuing here with the plumbing going in to these three tanks at least. Interesting, there's none of that gear for this particular tank. It almost looks like this tank has a stand. Is not having any work done to it just yet. So interesting to see what happens with that tank, which is obviously an odd tank in the line of tanks as well.
Yeah, that tank is continuing to just be that oddball. It seems that the more we see now, based off of the tank being a different construction, and some of the hardware that's being associated with the pipe work, it being different, it's definitely lending to the possibility that tank may actually be for an entirely different commodity than what the 3 and the 5 other tanks are. So it's very curious to see where we go. I think we'll have to wait to see more of the cryo pipes and the main runs to kind of trace where things are going, and then wait for that one to actually start being connected somewhere.
And calculations have been done that this set of 4 can replace the nitrogen tanks. The vertical, not replace, but they equal the quantity. And these LOX tanks equal the quantity of the vertical LOX tanks to either increase the capacity or to eventually replace these 5 tanks here completely. So we're still missing a couple of pipe racks over here. I'm just struggling to think. There's not a lot more to see at the launch site. They've put in some transformer over. I put transformer over here, and so we're guessing that was what this was for. So adding some more power into the electrical bunker. So they've finished that tank. Finished insulation on that tank. Interestingly, they've managed to get the grabber crane underneath here, so there's plenty of room underneath here for the crane and the SPMT for the tank that went under there as well. I guess not long after this photo, the tank came in here with the SPMT for grabber to lift up. And with Miss Grabber there. I keep asking about fans because this one here has a fan underneath it, but I've been told this one has a higher duty cycle, so it can be used more before it freezes, and we can see it in action here, how it's getting frozen cryo liquid, slowly going more and more into a gaseous state, and that's producing high pressure gas for the deluge farm pressure tanks. So that'll be recharging the deluge tank from the last deluge test. Okay, what have I not seen at the launch site? I think we just about covered everything. We seem to be way ahead of time today, guys. So we might have a quick look over at the LNG site. We'll go back to questions and donations, please, Joe.
Sure. I want to thank Brian Green for gifting 5 memberships, and also says if we get to 1,000 likes, he'll buy more memberships. Much appreciated. Matt PD, a €2 super chat. Has Ship 28 had all its eyebrow blocks refitted yet?
I'm not sure. It has had its decals put on, I'm not sure about the eyebrow. Yeah, I think, do you mean the Starlink covers?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that comment in the chat earlier, and I to be honest, I wasn't quite sure what he meant by the eyebrow as well. Perhaps that does make sense, though, as you mentioned, the Starlink dishes that the four, if that is the question, those four link antennas have been installed.
And it has its decals now, so it's officially Ship 28, which is
And
nice to see.
yeah, and I'm thankful that they went back to the orientation of the decals that they had on Ship 24, where it was, in my opinion, reading the correct way. Because Ship 25, the one side of decals was upside down to my logic.
Okay,
Right,
back
right. I want to thank Brian Green again for a $2 super chat. Hit that like button, nerds. Great job, RGV. JK Video with a $10 super chat. No message, but thank you for your support. A question from James Wilson. If they had the room for it, would a mega bay be built at the launch site to help with road closures? I'm going to flat out say no.
Yeah, I
not
don't see
sure.
any reason to have one over here. And keep that centralized with all the build stuff.
Speaking of road closures, we have a road closure on Monday, is it?
Yeah, Monday we have
Yep.
it's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's actually on the county website. It has been scheduled as opposed to just possible. So and that the beach will be closed. So barring any unexpected delays that we see before then, it's definitely looking like it'll be a positive test, or at least a positive attempt at a test.
Oh.
In light of our
Well,
two dress rehearsal failure aborts, I might have needed to amend that comment.
well, at least this time it's on the suborbital tank farm, so this should be okay this time, BJ.
I agree. I do agree that I think a lot of those problems are something related to the orbital tank farm hardware. Still working out some gremlins from all the reconfigurations.
Absolutely.
I was wondering about that because we don't see other than just the continuation of plumbing everything new, and we don't see much work being done that shows changes, but yet we see all this work on alignment stuff happening. So I'm kind of confused as to why did they do the rollback and destack if we haven't seen much for repairs for as far as the GSE stuff.
So it could have been like a stuck valve on booster or something. Although the first wet dress rehearsal seemed to quit as soon as they started filling the ship. And we did see some work on the QD area up there. So perhaps it has a little bit to do with the QD, the ship alignment. Perhaps with the ship alignment maybe making it difficult for them to get a proper connection on the ship QD. You're right, there doesn't seem to be a lot of work going on the actual tank farm, but a lot of work going on over here at the tower and launch table.
Yeah, some wild thoughts that I had on that was that perhaps, I mean, we saw the work that was done on the ship QD between the two test attempts last week. I'm wondering if maybe perhaps since we haven't seen any continued work on any of the fueling systems, it appears maybe they needed to shift back after those two attempts and get ship 28 back over to pad B. And get that static fire taken care of, with us seeing the staging of the 2-point lifter stand and the ship stand over next to Mega Bay 2. I wonder if maybe there's a push that they're looking to maybe get 29 out to the pad at some point sooner than later, and that they're just kind of pushing that test ahead, and then they'll come back to full stack testing after the 28 static fire is done.
Yeah,
Okay,
that makes
Joe,
sense
some more
because
questions?
there's really no other reason to put 29 on a stand. It's already been cryoed. It's ready to go. We believe it has engines. We've seen engines go into the bays. So we're pretty sure that they have engines. So that really leads to the only reason why they would want to get that out of there and onto a transport stand.
Okay, any more questions, Joe?
Question from Missing Tools. Will the land swap add about 5+ acres of usable land?
At this stage, the latest bit of paperwork really only retains to this, BJ. There's more about land swap. I think that's a whole different subject, isn't it?
Yeah, the land swap is about them gaining some additional space that's not already SpaceX owned, to the west of the launch site, and then some other parcels that are to the east of the village. They're completely disconnected as far as the Army Corps of Engineers' current plans. SpaceX owns a whole lot of land around the launch complex as it is, so there's viable land with the appropriate approvals. So the whole land swap thing, I think, is more long term. I'd be curious. It seems like some of the changes that they've done with the Army Corps is trying to get quick progress. Getting that extra land is going to probably the land, especially next to the launch site, is also in the wetlands. So if they wanted to actually develop that new land that's part of the swap idea, is going to need all the environmental approvals that the rest of the stuff they already own needs. So it'll be interesting to see how much that still moves forward. We're expecting that to be on the Texas Park and Wildlife's agenda for their March meeting to continue discussions regarding the land swap.
Agreed. John T. asking, was a launch site car park a requirement to remove roadside parking?
I'm not sure it was a requirement. It was definitely one of the reasons they put it there. And I mean, that's gone out the window now, hasn't it? It's what do you call it, Todd? Asphalt storage area.
Yeah, temporary asphalt storage.
That was a good one. And then a question from Moody Blues. Will the new tower be just for catches? No. Your thoughts?
I completely agree. I don't think so. I don't see any reason that they would have just a catch-only tower. I think Zach's brought up some great points in the past that I completely agree with in terms of the need for a booster that's caught needs to be able to be set down and put into press and detanked and of excess propellant and stuff. So even if they weren't launching off of this tower, they're still going to need a ring and all that stuff. And launch cadence is really at the core of things advancing for Artemis program requirements with all the tanking of depots and things like that. They just need more pads to launch off of.
And also, there was talk from SpaceX saying that once the new tower is built, this tower will be updated. So while they're updating this, there'll be no launching from the original tower. So they're going to have to be able to launch from the new tower site, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that they have to be able to launch, because that one's going to be renovated or updated.
Okay, Joe, any more questions and donations?
Just got a question in from Isaac Keldston. Greg Scott's latest flyover shows the tower section being partially disassembled. Why?
I'll take a stab at that one, and I don't know. I think one of the interesting parts, and I know exactly what he's referring to. The biggest thing on that is the I don't know is the fact that the tower, there's one segment that is being seemingly disassembled. However, the other tower segment right next to it actually has had more progress recently in terms of some of the staircases have been added. So the one that has been stripped of parts, the other one has been added of other parts. So I don't think there's anything we can draw from that, even though I know some opinions have been put forth.
So where's the QD in relation to these two parts?
You can see on the tower, the right-hand tower there, if you look just above your cursor, at that angle piece right there is a vertical support to the top hinge point. You can kind of see the hinge point there at the bottom, right at the bottom. It's in line with the second horizontal from the top there, the only one that's actually there. You can kind of see If you look at the left tower, the other hinge point for the actual chopstick is at the very top, and it's kind of coming off the core. If you the horizontal, you can see it there. That vertical element is not installed right now because it actually supports back up to the other segments, so obviously it can't be there. And then the last element to kind of look for on the right-hand tower on the column, you can see about halfway up the column, there is a attachment point. The left column in the front right there is the attachment point for the actuator that actually hinges the quick disconnect arm.
Very good.
But yeah, we have seen that in that lower level. You can see there that essentially one set of horizontal decking has been removed out of that entire system since other flyovers have taken place. So it is very curious for sure.
There seems to be two both of these are missing. Is that right? Oh no, that one's still there. So
Yeah,
just
that one's
one.
there. It's just the bottom one. Yep.
Yep, gotcha. And thank you, Greg Scott. Consider giving a follow there on X.
Stephen Laurie asking, will the new tower be taller? Elon has mentioned 2 size increases of the stack in the future.
Probably not this tower. There's one idea I did hear, which was interesting, is perhaps I could increase the size of the base a little bit. Maybe just maybe the 15 meters for the new version 3 ships. I'm not sure. What do you reckon, BJ?
Yeah, I don't think that. While I think that could be a possible way to not have to change the actual tower itself, as far as construction of being a larger piece, that would still require the quick disconnect arm would have to be relocated on the tower, regardless of how it gets taller. I personally don't believe they'll change anything. I think there's enough weight in the aft section of a ship that they can stretch the top end. Either by stretching the top in the nose cone above the actual lift points or just moving the lift points lower on the vehicle. There is obviously a point where potentially the center of mass would be too high to make that work, but I think you'd have to go to a fairly extreme stretch to get to that point.
Okay, how's that, Joe, now?
All right, excellent. Cosmic asking, will they need to keep the older GSE tanks in order to provide fuel for 2 towers?
I think we touched on that a bit earlier. There's a couple of possibilities of this being one tank farm for the 2 towers. That almost sounds like a movie line, doesn't it? One tank farm for them all. Or they could put a second tank farm in, and there's really no indication yet of either. The only indication I can see so far is that there's a lot of electrical underground here being put in recently for at least a control centre for this tower over here. As far as fluids go, well, that's still anybody's guess. And they're good questions, and we appreciate your questions. Keep them coming. We've got a little bit of time to kill, so any more questions, for sure, throw them in the chat, please.
Randall Williams asking, could the lunar lander starship have the tanks and payload placement switched, thus giving a shorter distance from living spaces to the moon surface so elevator could be shorter?
That's a very interesting thought. That's quite the design change. I guess there'd be issues with load coming down through the payload section. I don't know whether you'd want to be on a ship with all that propellant above you. I guess there's not much difference at being above you or below it, especially once you get into space. But structurally, I wouldn't think so. That's a lot of structure to put in the bottom here, where there's no pressurized vessel. So I would say no, personally.
I'm going to agree with you, Steph. You also have a balance issue. That putting a lot of weight up higher, and I do think you want the weight lower on the ship than versus above you.
Agreed. $10 super chat from Brian Green. What is your guess for when Tower 2 fully completed and first used? Also, what development are y'all most excited for in the future beyond Tower 2 stack?
I'll give that one to BJ for a sec.
That's a good question. I think there's so much in play that it's hard to predict what might come next. I do think as far as the program is concerned, I think that it says being able to advance things over in Florida is going to be a big thing. Obviously, that's not overly specific to what we discuss here. So um, I just look forward to seeing where, especially when they get into manufacturing cadence. Once the Star Factory is finished, it'll be interesting to see just how quick they can get. Given the fact that some of the latest talking about trying to get as many as 9 launches a year, they're going to definitely have to ramp up everything from manufacturing to testing to every last bit of to get to that cadence.
My guess on when Tower 2 will be done is yes, it will be done, because I'm not even gonna get a time frame. There's so much to do beforehand. I wouldn't even want to try. I hope quickly, but I don't have an idea when. As far as for what I'm looking forward to, I'm excited to see the changes they make as they're building Tower 2 and OLM 2, because it'll show us directly what they learned without them having to tell us. We're going to see the water plates go in, the foundations go in, the piling go in. All that's going to just give us an indication of what they learned and what going forward is a good idea. And if some of our speculations that we never had proven right or wrong, will they come true? And it's just going to be really exciting to see how it's developed.
I'm excited to see Massey's develop, and in the future, I'm excited to see some human launching once they get, especially once Kennedy gets going. I'm excited to see Kennedy getting going. I'm especially excited that Australia recently signed a treaty with America to launch American rockets, private and government rockets, from Australian soil. So we may end up seeing a launch pad in Australia, which would be really nice to see, well, for me especially anyway.
Along those same lines, Moody Blues asking how soon for the first launch for Starship from 39A or 39B.
BJ?
Yeah, I still think we're probably at least a year out from that, maybe even more. I wouldn't be surprised if we see launches from Pad B here at the Boca before we see anything from the Cape. I think that's going to be mostly just a cadence and success from Texas to show NASA and everyone else that's associated with the Cape that launches aren't going to be problematic for other infrastructure and everyone else that's there in Florida.
So just going quickly back to Australia, there's a rocket launching site here in Queensland, Australia, on the east coast, and its latitude is quite nicer at 20. And there's talk that SpaceX may use this property and develop something in here, which I'll just come back out to show where that is in Australia, because Australia is quite big. And that's right up in Queensland, nicely on the east coast there, and has nothing much to launch over the top of, so that could be a good thing.
Steph, where are you in comparison to that? I don't know exactly where you are.
I live down here in Victoria, right down here, where we get lots of bushfires.
Gotcha.
Okay, Joe, how are we going?
And another question for Bob. Cat, how close is Starbase to the nearest natural gas pipeline? They could eliminate the methane trucks with their own liquefaction facility. Also, a common byproduct of natural gas is helium.
So there is that liquefaction plant right next to Brownsville there on highway. I keep getting that highway wrong. There's a highway just there.
Highway 48 is the one that's next to it.
Highway 48, we have this site in here. So just going back to Boca Chica over here. But there's no plans so far. We haven't heard anything about a pipeline going through. And I agree with the logistics, not so much for the methane, but especially for the LOX and the nitrogen as they go forward. I mean, how many launches can they physically do here in a year? How many tankers can they physically bring in here in a whole year to actually keep up with cadence? I think that's going to be a little bit of a logistics issue moving forward. I've got some pictures of that.
We see after launches and after big testing that the trucks are lined up. They're going as fast as they can, and we already max out on how many can offload and at the same time. And you'll sometimes see just a line of 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, they just keep lining up down the highway. So if they are going to keep up the cadence, something's got to be figured out to get these trucks offloaded or gases in there faster.
So this is that site over opposite the shipping channel. I just showed you that's this little area right here. That's that bend right there, and it's the shipping channel into Port Brownsville. But like I said, I think this is designed especially for exporting liquefied natural gas rather than supplying SpaceX at this stage. And back to you, Joe.
All right, a question from Henry Blackburn. If SpaceX can get the rest of the wetlands, could there be a possibility of a third tower at Starbase?
There's always been plans for work out here with, I think some of the very, very early drawings we saw of this whole area had a launch tower and an OLM over here, and possibly a site for it over here with another tank farm and so on in here. There's an old drawing, I don't have it on hand, but there's an old drawing of this whole area here showing development all in this area. But we haven't seen any of that come to fruition yet because there's going to be a whole lot of paperwork to get that bit of wetlands filled in with concrete, obviously. So yes, there is a possibility. It's going to be a while, but yes, there's a possibility of a third tower. Can't rule anything really out at this stage for things like that. It will take a lot of paperwork. Like this little bit of land won't take very long at all. We should see that filled in within the next month or so. But reclaiming larger amounts of land that require land swaps, that's a whole different deal, which will take quite a lot of time. But in the distant future, why not?
Yeah, I agree. In the distant future, it's definitely a possibility. Obviously, the previous plans that we have seen and the previous submissions to the Army Corps definitely suggest that it's a possibility. But I think right now they're just in a need to be operational sooner than what the paperwork can be run on right now. So they're just kind of working with an audible, and then maybe down the road we will see a third built out into the wetlands more.
Agreed. Question from Chris M. Will the new tower be oriented the same way as the existing one, or will it be faced to the other side, facing towards the land side instead of seaside, to protect the ground equipment?
Yep, there's a possibility this could go a number of ways. One of the things people say in response to the tower being here is that obviously they've got to launch over the top of these infrastructure, but being made aware, obviously, that by the time the stack gets over this area, it's going to be quite high, tens of thousands of feet in the air, like 1,000 feet or so, up in the air over the top here. So, except for a power slide or a major fault, this area is not in as much danger as we may think. Obviously, if it was on the fast side, it'd have to do its avoidance maneuver to away from the coast, which is the wrong direction. So it could be orientated exactly the same, or it could be that the ring goes towards the wetland. That's a good question. We won't know that till we see some groundwork. That'll be one of the first things we will know as to the orientation once we see groundwork starting in here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think those two orientations are probably the only two that would ever be considered. I don't see any realm where they would put the launch mount either inland to the tower or closer to the highway. I think I don't know that there's much difference between the other two orientations, whether it's towards the pad A or towards the wetlands. I think both ways are going to give you about the same clearance to the other towers, so I don't think it's a concern.
A thought that came up in chat, I think it might have been Jax might have brought up, was only a passing thought, that this may be a bit of a mistake landing here with the cryopipes being just under the concrete here. The acoustic energy of the booster landing may be an issue with underground cryopipes under the concrete here, but that's once again just a passing thought. Thanks, Joe.
All right, another question from Stephen Lowry. If SpaceX wants to build a remote site in Oz, will Stephanie move and work on site or be a Starship Gazer type? Good question.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. Thank you, and I appreciate asking that. Yes, it has crossed my mind that I could move to Queensland. Absolutely. As for working there, not sure. Perhaps in an office somewhere. I used to be a tradesman, but not a tradesperson, but not so much anymore. Now I'm a bit older. But yeah, I would at least love to be able to go up there and make some kind of living out of documenting. That'd be nice. Thank you.
Most definitely. Question from Seabreeze. Expanding on the retanking issues, is there any plans to expand Route 4 to accommodate twice the refueling tankers?
Like make it into a super highway or a freeway. I don't know. It's I mean, it has been upgraded like between here and the build site, obviously, and up to Massey's. So perhaps they could just improve the road. I'm not sure widening the road would make. I'm not sure how you increase traffic, but maybe.
I think it would be pretty hard for him because I know when I was there, as you get further up towards Brownsville, the property lines aren't that far from the road. I'm sure there's a easeway in between the property lines and the road, but I think it would require quite a bit to go much wider, at least even 2 lanes wider. I think it would be significantly a lot of paperwork and a lot of problems for the city to even do that.
Yeah, I think there's issues with the wetlands and the fish and wildlife and all that for expanding. I don't see it happening. Thanks 55 Chevy Guy Steve for a $10 super chat. Thanks for another informative show, he says. Thanks Rocket Profit for gifting 5 memberships. That's pretty awesome, bud. You got some good targets there. Robshin Nazarov, thanks for another great show. Any guesses for IFT3?
Only going by Elon saying second week of March. On his what was it? The Spaces the other day. There was a bit of information came up from there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've slipped too far from mid-March yet. I know some think that it's slipped a couple of weeks from that. I think this week, the next probably 10 days is probably going to be a big key. I think getting static fire of Ship 28 done and then maybe starting to see vehicles come back to the pad will give us some there. But I think if they can get in the next 7 to 10 days, get through some of this testing and get a full stack back in, I think mid-March is still possible.
I'm going to go early April. I hope I'm wrong, but if I'm right, then I can say I told you so. But I'll just go with early April.
Everyone wants to be the I told you so person, don't they?
Exactly.
All right. Final question in my queue from John T. Where will the next car park be? I need to know the next development location, and car parks are the clue.
That's a great point. Yeah, I wish we knew that.
Very good questions. Thanks, chat. We'll wrap up the show. Thanks, Joe, for reading those out. I thought it was an awesome little Q&A session there. Thank you. I really appreciate all the questions there and appreciate all the donations and everybody stopping by to say good day and showing your support and just being in chat and pushing the like button helps our channel out as well. So make sure everyone hits the like button on their way out. And I'll let Todd sign off.
I just appreciate being here. Thank you very much. I can't wait to see the changes next week. And yeah, everyone like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff you're supposed to do. Don't forget memberships get you these show and tell shows, and those are absolutely fun to go over with everybody's opinions, not just the 3 people talking. It's a lot of fun and definitely worth it.
Thank you, Todd, for your time today. I really appreciate you being here for us. And BJ, thank you. I'll let you sign off now.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us again this week. We did see a lot of things, and we were able to have a nice little session there at the end and answer your questions. As always, I'm looking forward to seeing what the next week brings us, and I think there's going to be some more developments, hopefully towards launch and not just infrastructure.
Okay, thanks, BJ. And I'll sign off as well, saying good day from Australia. For me, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. I'll go and have some brekkie now and go and face the outside. And I'll let Jay do the final sign-off. And like I say, thank you all for joining us today. And we'll have Zach back next week, I believe. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Steph. I let you get on with your day. Appreciate your early morning sessions and accommodating. Thanks, Emlyn, for turning the keys, turning the knobs, pushing the buttons. Thanks, RGV team, for supplying the awesome quality content photos. Thanks all of our awesome chat supporters, gifters. Thanks, Astro Jen, my lovely wife, for scheduling these streams and rounding up our commentary team. And with that, most engines cut off. Hot staging confirmed. Love ya. Bye.